So we'll welcome everybody to tonight's regular meeting tonight, Tuesday, September 8th. Call to meeting the call to order the meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. I guess that's actually for me to say. Okay, hey, Chief Pugner's join us. I don't see anybody on the participant list other than speakers, so we'll assume no public input. Any correspondence? Any correspondence?
Nick, can you hear
Bob,
anything?
you're really, really hard to hear.
I can hear you, Brent.
Okay.
Thanks. Is that any better?
Not much.
Okay, hold on. Let me check.
Oh, that's good.
Let me just make sure I've got mic and speakers all up as high as they go.
There you go.
Audio. Yeah, okay. How's that?
Much
Good.
better.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Do you have any correspondence?
No.
No. Okay. Approval of the minutes of the special meeting of August.
Okay, Bob,
18th.
I'm sorry, but whatever you just did, you're cutting out again.
Dion, I see you shaking your head. Is that because you can't hear me?
Okay,
You're too far from the speaker, Bob. We can't hear your microphone.
Dion, can you hear me?
there, I can hear you right now.
Okay.
Seems like you're cutting in and out.
Well, give me a second here for a second.
Oh.
Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I can't hear any of you. I wonder why that is.
That's probably a good thing.
We didn't say anything.
Everybody just move your lips, but don't say anything. Drive them crazy.
Give me just a second here to address technical difficulties. Operator error, more likely. Hey, Dion.
Hey, would you like to just stay on speakerphone and see if maybe you can listen that way?
Yeah, let's do that. Keep it moving.
Okay.
All right, sorry about that.
Can you hear me through the speaker? You guys can hear me. I'm going to listen on. Okay.
Next is special August 18th, 2020. Those meetings were previously provided, so entertain a motion
To accept the minutes as submitted.
Hey, stop him for a minute. We heard him fine. He just couldn't hear us. So if he can just listen to the meeting on the phone, I think that'd be better.
Okay, yep. Okay, so I'm gonna,
Well, that's
all right, there we
what
go.
I'm doing.
There we go. Okay,
Okay.
he made a motion. Who seconded it?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion of of accepting the minutes for the special meeting of August 18th as submitted, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? None, all right, we're done.
Hey, Dion.
Hey, Daleen.
Hey, if Bob, if you can hear me, if you back out of the audio portion of the Zoom meeting, you can actually use your phone to call in,
Yeah,
your own.
Yeah,
phone to call into
that
the-
might be better.
yeah, I agree. Remind me, where's the audio section?
Let
Bottom
me,
left.
on the bottom left.
You can actually switch to.
Is mute.
Yeah, if you click next to mute, there's a arrow next to mute, a caret. And if you pick switch to phone audio, it should give you a number to call into.
Yeah, I got it. Give me a second.
The ID followed by pound.
Okay.
ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just. You are in the meeting now. There are 13.
Okay, I'm on the phone. Can folks hear me?
Good.
Yes.
We're good? Okay. All right, so we've gotten through the first 4 items on the agenda. The 5th item is the election of a Board of Finance Vice Chair. According to the town charter, the board is supposed to have a chair and a vice chair. So we'll entertain motions to nominate a member to be a vice chair.
Bob, I'd like to make a motion that we get Brian Tersey as vice chair.
Okay, is there a second?
Is Cynthia not on?
It
No.
looks like not. All right, not being a second, do we have another motion?
I'd like to nominate Robert Palmer.
Okay, do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a second, we have a motion, we have it seconded. Discussion.
Yeah, this is a 4-3 board. Next fall, it can be 4-3. So I have a very good memory. I think we're all trying to work together. So to give Brian the vice chair is a small token. But if you guys want to vote 4-3, then, or 4-2, then I'm okay with that. But I think we should try to do things differently on boards, but you guys have your vote.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay. 4-2. Thank you. Motion passed. All right. Board of Ed update is the next agenda item. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Carver and to Terry.
Sure. I believe that that the purpose of us coming again this month was to provide an overview of kind of where we were financially based on the conversation from last month. So Terry, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, so I'll be very honest, with today being the first day of school, I don't have an extremely detailed analysis, but we wanted to at least give you some summary numbers because we're, of course, tracking things as we go along. So if you recall, when we filed a state survey a few months ago, the number that we filed, this is all related to COVID expenditures and potential COVID expenditures. So our total that we filed was $1,941,000. I can tell you that encumbered to date, in COVID-related expenditures is 589,061. And we have some updates on sources of funds, if you want to know sources of how we address the 1.9 million, which we hope is not 1.9 million. And we can talk a little more about that if you want.
And I do want to let the board.
Terry, I'm sorry, yes, to your point, before you go to kind of sources to cover, can you give, I wasn't following completely on the uses. So is the 1.9 number still the best estimate at this time?
I would say we're hopeful that it's lower than that.
Right.
But, you know, it's a very fluid situation. And as we talked about in the past, in terms of personnel, that's where the volatility lies. And so it's difficult to project how, if we would have illnesses, if we would, you know, what will happen in terms of the virus and our staff. As of right now, we only have one staff member who qualified through medical documentation to be out and be able to use sick time. And so we have a long-term sub in for that individual. So the cost of that is around $52,000 at a BA step 1.
Terry, I
yeah.
did want to say, because would also that there was an adjustment made by the state with regards to the most recent allocation of funding. And I shared with you at the last meeting, it was a little over 600,000. They made an adjustment in the transportation line from a previous survey that they had made before. And the new figure is $563,256. So I forgot to mention that as I opened it up. I just wanted to keep you updated.
Dr. Carver, that's the total of this relief funds from the state, or is that just for the transportation?
No. There was two separate sets of pots of money, which Terry will talk about. One is the CARES money, and the CARES money is a grant that we applied for, and we've already received in the amount of little over $236,000. In addition, at the last meeting, I shared with you that and I think I actually forwarded to you the spreadsheet. Did I not?
Yes.
Yes. Since that spreadsheet has been sent out, there was an adjustment made from the $600,000, was a little bit over $600,000 to 500. I'm looking right now.
563,256.
Right. And the money where the adjustment was made was strictly in the transportation line. So it wasn't a substantial thing, but it was based on a previous survey that they had done. So I just wanted to let you know, Terry's going to walk you through all the pots that we have currently in terms of dealing with COVID, but I forgot to mention at the very beginning that there was that adjustment.
Sure. And Dr. Carver, that's helpful. Look, to kind of just tee it up, I think the way a number of the members of the board are thinking about this is that there's about 1.9 of estimated expenses. Understand, very dynamic environment, very fluid, but that's kind of the best number we have at this point. And on the other, right, so those are what we refer to as uses or additional costs. On the other side, we've got about 1.2 million from the last meeting, and you're telling us it's been changed, right? But we had 1.2 million from the 343 of excess, the 226 of CARES, and initially the 639 from the state. So, you know, if we can kind of keep it at that high level at this point, right, knowing that it's dynamic and fluid, it would help, I think, the board to understand, again, the comparison of the 1.9 that's been teed up as expenses and the 1.2 that's been identified as revenue or means by which to cover.
Right.
Okay. Well, Bob, I have updates to all those numbers. So the 1.9 I'm leaving as a placeholder because that was what began our discussions a couple of months ago. Do I think that's a good number? The answer is I don't know. I'm hoping that number is high. I'm
I
hoping
jumped-
that number is high because we put an estimate in there related to personnel that I hope we don't incur.
Bob,
Okay.
can I ask a question, if you don't mind, Bob? You started off with the 352. What was that number from?
I'll take you through it. Let me take you through it because we're jumping around a bit. So
Well, and Terry, I'm trying to, again, look, we only wanted a
I
quick.
know, and I have it in a summary. I'd like to
then
just
stay,
give you.
yeah, stay at the summary level, understanding
Yes.
that it's dynamic.
So let me give you the summary level, and then if you have a couple of questions, we'll see if we're able to answer them at this time. So the summary level is, the original estimate from the state survey was $1,941,000. Encumbered to date, that means that I've encumbered it on the books. It doesn't mean it's been paid out. It means it's been encumbered. All right. 589,061. So
Sorry,
those
one
are
more time, Terry. 989?
589,061.
Okay, thank you.
Now I'm going to give you the sources. The CARES money. The CARES money for Bethel is 226,064. The additional $10,000 is earmarked for St. Mary's. So the amount for the Bethel Board of Ed is 226,064.
So no change.
Right. The CRF monies, which is the Corona Release Funds, and those are the monies that, based on the survey, the state turned around and allocated funds to each district. And that's the number that was adjusted downward because they found that they had an error in it. So the revised number in total is 563,256. Okay. The rest of the funds would be, first, not that we would want to deplete all of this fund because you know why we've established this fund, and that would be the unexpended funds account, the 1% account not to exceed 2% balance at any given point in time. The current balance before we started at the beginning of this fiscal year, and we have not dipped into it at all in 1920. So the balance that is in that fund is $363,723.
Okay.
And then the last piece would be funds remaining as of now that I'm updating you from 6:30. All right. Because from 6:30 to now, during the closing of the books, some things were back ordered. We let go of them. We closed some purchase orders. A little more money fell through. So what we currently have remaining that we're continuing to pay bills and close is $385,834. If you add up those four sources of funds available or potentially available, the total comes to $1,538,877. Of course, that would be exhausting all funds in the 1% fund, which is for emergencies and opportunities, as you know. I would consider this state of affairs to be emergency type, but it does also preclude us then if there's a special education funding issue or something like that. And you know all the reasons that we established that fund years back and how we've used it for some things that have been good. Also, Bob, I think it speaks to your approach to finance, which is not to just have everything become a major issue and have to find the money, but instead prepare for those days when issues arise. So,
Terry, I have one question, Bob. That 380,000 that was extra from last year, this board has to act on that first, right? I mean, you've got it in your good column, but it shouldn't be in your column yet. Would everybody agree on that? Am I wrong?
I said that these were sources of funds available, and that's an estimated deposit to the 1% account. And yes, we would bring that to the Board of Finance because the Board of Finance has to make a motion to approve that.
Okay, but I hope you're not counting on it yet until you get it, right? I would imagine.
And Nick, to your point, it's early, it's premature. We're not making any decisions tonight. This was all to keep us kind of up to date as to what the spread was between anticipated expenses and kind of anticipated sources to pay those expenses. Net, Terry, it sounds like the spread between those two, given the best we know now, has stayed relatively the same. Maybe it's gone up, or excuse me, it's gone down a little bit, but we're still waiting to see what the components are of the 1.9 and where we end up on that.
Right.
So this is preparing us, Nick, for when Bob comes to us at the end of the year to say, here are the final numbers. Right? The fiscal year ended June 30th, but
Yes.
they're still the team is still in the process of processing payables, encumbrances, things come in, things come out, and eventually Bob's going to come to us with, here's what the results were for fiscal year 20. And we as a board will have to figure out the best uses of where we end up at the end of fiscal year 20.
Correct.
Okay, but it's something that has to be post-dated. We're not out just spending this money and saying, oh, that was for last year's expense. You're finishing things up, and it's basically paying the bills for last year, starting July 1st.
I haven't spent a penny of that money.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not creep. It's well, June 30th year end.
Correct.
Yes. And so that you know where we are in the closing, we filed our EFS on September 1st. And so I would say that number's getting close to being a real number. But it's at this point, you just deem it, we are still paying down some bills, but there aren't all that many left. The dollar amount is pretty low at this point. And now we go into audit. So we filed, we always file on September 1st. That's the due date. We filed in the morning. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the phone rang. It was the auditors. They wanted all our documents. So they're already cooking with the audit. So that's good news.
Okay. Bob, are you with us? He's calling a friend. It's a lifeline.
I think he may have lost us on the phone.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions, other questions? While we're waiting?
I hear the classes were very empty today. This whole 2-day deal on, 2 days off. You know, a couple of my kids' classes had 1 student in it today in the high school.
At the high school?
In the classroom.
Yeah. Well, Nick, if you want to come tomorrow as a parent and talk about that, I'm happy to do it.
I sorry, for some reason I got kicked out of the meeting. I think from the Board of Ed summary perspective, I believe we've gotten out of the update what we needed, which is kind of a constant monitoring of where the numbers are coming out. And again, we don't, we kind of know what the levers are. We don't know where those levers are going to end up necessarily. So kind of status quo, and we keep our eyes on it.
And Bob, I completely understand that the unexpended funds account is not solely for COVID. That wasn't even in our minds when that account was established. And we all know why that account was established. And I think it's done well for us.
Yep.
Okay. So are we good to let Dr. Carver and Terry get back to making day number 2 of school go smoothly?
It was a long day.
Yeah.
I'm sure it went fine. Maybe not perfect, right? But perfectly fine. So,
I'm going to say not perfect, but
perfectly fine. We got it done, right? Okay, good deal. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bob.
We got a new face. Where's Chief Pugner? There he is. Chief, you're on mute. Or maybe.
I think I'm good now. Got me? There you
You
go.
are.
Yes. It's been a while
Love the mirror.
since my
Love
last
the
Zoom
mirror.
meeting.
Sure.
Um,
So,
so,
Chief, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us tonight. The idea was to do, again, much like the Board of Ed did, if you could, for the Bethel PD, do an update as to what additional things may be coming through, either because of COVID or because of some law changes, so that we have the components of the big picture for purposes of planning out our, well, frankly, how we close out fiscal year 20 and how we proceed in fiscal year 21.
okay, as far as COVID goes, we had kind of a positive effect, so to speak, because at first a lot of people weren't going away and taking vacation time. So we didn't have as much overtime originally, but that's kind of taken a turn for the worse now, because now we're having people coming back and they have to quarantine for 2 weeks after they get back, which is causing overtime. So it's starting to change a little bit there. The biggest concern ahead financially, as some of you know, especially Brian, is the police accountability bill that was passed by the legislation. It was kind of a rush through thing, and they didn't really take any input from the police departments at all. I think the intentions behind the bill weren't bad, they were good, but I think a lot of stuff that came out of it is going to be really hard for us to work through. But I'm more here to talk about the financial part of it. Probably the biggest thing financially for us as far as impacts go is the requirement of car and body cameras. We made a decision about 5 years ago when there was like a big push for body cameras across the country. At the time, it was us and a couple other departments in the area decided to go with car cameras instead of body cameras. We didn't feel there was a need for them here in Bethel. And it's not that we're against body cameras, it's just that it's a huge expense and it's a lot of upkeep. So with that being said, we're not going to have a choice now with this new police accountability bill. We already have the infrastructure in place because we did do the car cameras with a company that also does body cameras. So we kind of thought ahead thinking that this day would come where they would mandate body cameras, and now it's here. So at least we have our car cameras will work with our body cameras. However, with that being said, it's still a big expense. Lieutenant Libertini's been working on the project ever since the bill got passed. Unfortunately, we're one of several departments in Connecticut that are trying to do this now. So it's been slow getting numbers, but as far as like initial startup costs, we're probably looking at about $90,000 to the town. That's about $70,000 for all the cameras and the equipment, and between $20,000 and $30,000 for an additional server at the police department to handle all the new data that we have to store. Then after that, we're looking at, again, waiting for final numbers. I'm trying to give you approximate numbers now, just so you guys know. It's about $30,000 a year in expenses to upkeep the program. And that doesn't include man hours. That's just licensing and maintenance contracts. And I know probably someone is going to ask the question, so I'll try to answer it ahead of time, is about grants. There's some wording that there might be grants available for some of this, but we haven't seen anything yet. They did have grants for body cameras a few years back that some people took advantage of. It was just for the startup and that was it. And you had to kind of abide by whatever rules they put in place if you took the money. But now we're going to see possibly if we get some grants. So that might help with some of the initial startup costs. Some of the other things in the bill, we're fortunate enough that we've already been doing, like being CALIA certified. As of right now, the bill's requiring all police departments in Connecticut to be nationally accredited. There's some talk that might go away because of all the expenses to the towns, but we're already currently doing that, so we don't have to worry about that part. Other parts of it, the drug screening, we already do drug screening, random drug testing for officers. Now it's going to be mandated that they have it done at least once every 3 years. So there's going to be a little bit of additional expense with that, but it's going to be not significant. I think we have in our budget, and don't hold me to this, I want to say $4,500 for drug screening now. We might have to up that $500 to $1,000 to make sure we cover all the mandated ones. And then psychological tests. Waiting for details on exactly what it's going to be. But based on our current numbers, when we give our pre-employment psychological tests, it's about $500. So if you take, we're supposed to do it every 5 years. So if you take our department, that's about 8 officers a year. Easy math, 8 times 500 is about $4,000 additional for the psychological testing. So that's something we'll have to put in the budget years going forward. And I'm just trying to think. The other big thing, and I can't put a number on it now because the biggest problem with the bill is the way they changed the use of force laws. And I know that's not really covered in the Board of Finance. Something you guys usually don't worry about. But the issue is going to be the training when they actually figure out the language and the use of force part of the bill. It's going to change the way that our officers have been doing policing for some of us 20 years. And if we don't train them the right way, it's going to be a huge liability. So hopefully some of that part of the law changes. I know Brian's hoping for the same. And then the training won't be as drastic. But we do have to probably anticipate some additional money for training next year.
Steve, it sounds like, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Robert.
Chief, what's the time frame for implementing some of these programs, like getting the equipment, doing the accreditation, drug testing? When's the start date, and when does it have to be completed?
It's everything is a different time frame. I want to say the body cameras is 2 years out. I know the accreditation is 2022 as well. But like I said, we're already accredited, so we don't have to worry about that. So everything has different times frame. I want to say the use of force law is supposed to go in effect in, I mean, maybe Brian knows better than I do, but I think April.
I think it isn't it July 1st with the because that's when we get rid of the qualified immunity.
Gotcha. Yeah, I thought it was April, but it might be July. Yeah. So
I know on the grant issue, we're probably not going to be any money. They had 500,000 left, and the state police took almost all of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's talk about them possibly bringing back more grant money for us, but there's nothing guaranteed, and that's with the state. I don't know, where they're going to come up with the funding for it. But with the next legislation session, I believe starts in January again. Is that correct, Matt? And there's some hope that a lot of the use of force laws will change. I know that doesn't really, again, concern the Board of Finance that much, other than the additional training expense. So maybe that won't be as bad as we originally think.
If I might interject, yes, CCM and other lobbying organizations are pushing very hard to modify some of those parts of that new law to lessen municipal liability. Hopefully that'll bear some fruit.
Chief, can I jump in here?
Sure.
There's a lot of talk in this about holding each officer accountable for their own acts. So did that get moved a little bit? Do we have to have a different insurance, to cover things differently? How did that all play out?
So that played out not as bad as originally anticipated, as originally was pushed. There is some concern that it opens the door for people to challenge qualified immunity in courts. Everybody that I've talked to says that we're still going to be okay at the end, but you might be dragged through court a couple times. And the first people that it happens to will be dragged through court probably 2 years, and it could end up tainting their name and not wanting to do the job anyway when it's all said and done. But they did change some of that language at the last minute. That's the one thing they did make a little bit better before they passed it in the middle of the night.
Pug, in public, I want to congratulate you on your promotion. All right, congratulations, and I hear you're doing a good job.
Thank you, Nick.
So, Chief, in terms of the expenses that we can anticipate in the upcoming, this fiscal year and next fiscal year, you talked about the 70,000 for camera, 20,000 for additional server, 30,000 for maintenance and licensing. Do we anticipate that in this upcoming fiscal year as additional expense, or you said there's a 2-year window for that? How do we expect to attach that?
I got to look exactly when the body, I want to say the body camera is required next July, so it would be next fiscal year. So, but we might need the startup cost ahead of time. We might need to, again, you guys tell me where the money comes from, but we might need the money ahead of time for the startup cost, and then the $30,000 annually, again, approximate. Hopefully those numbers come down a little bit. I'm trying to give you like worst case scenario, but as accurate as possible.
Yeah, appreciate that, Chief. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
That was helpful.
If I can interject to Nick's question, Kerma is our insurance carrier for liability insurance, property and liability for the town of Bethel. They have already stated that they will cover police officers under this new bill. So there was, as the chief said early in the process, there was some fear that officers would have to go out and get their own personal liability coverage. That's not the case. The question is how this bill might be modified to lessen the impact financially on the town. And right now that number is not known. It's still being analyzed by the actuaries and the risk managers at the insurance company.
Thank you, Matt.
And just, add with like the server part of it. I mean, we're trying to get a server that'll have enough storage so we don't have to go back next year and add storage right away. So something that'll at least be built for 2 or 3 years worth of storage. And I know as of this afternoon, Lieutenant Libertini was still waiting back to get final numbers. So we got a ballpark number for you just so we could, you guys kind of know what to anticipate.
So on a related matter, how did the pandemic affect our arrest rate in the town?
It did slow down little things. I think people were more hesitant to call us. But I think the arrest rates at the end of the day will probably be about the same. I mean, we're finding a lot of DWIs lately. And I think that's just, people are stuck at home. People are drinking more because of it. People are just frustrated. And then there was a lot of, I didn't compare numbers to numbers, but it seemed like an increase of just domestic calls. Not arrests were made, but just a lot more of family fighting and things like that, because people were cooped up more, especially back in, March and April. We did see an increase in those types of calls. So maybe not arrests, but just, family feud, so to speak, husband and wife arguing, father and son arguing.
And how's the health been of the force? Have we had any effect of COVID?
Knock on wood. It's been good. We haven't had any people that have been affected by it or come down with it. A couple scares, but it came out, good. So
great. And I too congratulate you on your promotion. Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else for the chief? All right, Chief, thank you very much. Maybe next month, if there's some more updates, we may ask you to come in for a quick 5-minute kind of update if the numbers are starting to solidify. But until then, we'll put these numbers kind of in the back of our mind for playing with what we're going to do.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks. All right, last agenda item, the Comptrollers Report.
Okay. I sent it out I gave it to Dion on Friday. I think she got it out to you guys. So just going with the revenue to begin with, the tax revenue is still coming in. It's coming in on a good pace. We have 21 million of the 68 million in just general tax revenue in so far. There's still about 116 that's deferred until October. There's also, I talked to Ann today, there's also about $250,000 that's outstanding from Chase on leases, car leases that are run through Chase Bank, Chase being the lessor. And apparently there was a glitch, not with us, but with the bills going out all over the state of Connecticut. So Chase is trying to find out whose cars they belong to, how much they owe. Ann figured it out, and we were owed about $250,000, and she's expecting that to come in this month. Also, just another note on the general tax revenue. The personal property tax collections as of the end of July was around 38, 39%. I'm sorry, at the end of August was about 38, 39%. Subsequent to August, in the first week or so in this week in September, she has received additional personal property tax. The biggest one coming from Eversource, and we're right around 98% of the personal property tax, not the cars, but the amount that's due from businesses for their equipment, their desks, cabinets, things like that. So we're in really good shape with that. And we'll find out in October, the second, there's no more deferral, so we'll find out in October where we're really going to be as far as revenues for the general tax collections. A couple of the other things, charges for services, they're pretty much in line. But I mean, conveyance taxes, recording fees, they're doing better than they were the prior year. But just to give you a heads up, Kermer, which is our carrier, Matt had mentioned them, we get roughly a dividend, if you want to call it, at the end of each year. And last year and the year before was roughly 70,000. We budgeted for 70. Well, this year we got 29,300. So we're down a little bit on that. Revenue from Park and Rec is only $2,000 or $2,200. Last year at this time, it was $59,000. That may pick up during the course of the year if COVID ends or if there's a vaccine or whatever. But right now we're down on that. Even the senior center, last year we had about $8,700 in revenue, and we don't have any collections at all for the senior center. So those type of items are gonna show up as, if it continues through the rest of the year, it's gonna be probably a deficit in that account. We budgeted 1.5 million. Right now we're at 205 roughly. And if it continues in this fashion, it's going to be on the short side. The other one that's a little short right now, and everybody knows this, use of money, which is interest that we earn on our short-term investments, not the long-term, but all the short-term. We got really good rates when we borrowed, but in return, we're only earning about 23 basis points, 25 basis points. To date, we've got about 20,000 in. We budgeted for the entire year, 500,000. So that's going to be on the short side as well if it continues in the fashion we're at. So that pretty much covers the revenue. I think we're in pretty good shape, even to the extent of, if collection rate is the same as it was in the prior years at 99%, that's going to be enough to overcome the shortfall in the use of money or charges for services. When you come to the expenses, everything is pretty much, it's mostly salaries, it's no expenses. If you looked at the report, you're seeing this month, for whatever reason, and it's been straightened out, postings other than salaries, like secretaries, selectmen, or clerks, those accounts have been closed out, so nobody can post it out anymore, and it's only going to go into salaries. That was a glitch this past month. But if another thing I wanted to point out was on legal fees. We have so far about $18,000 in legal fees, and the analysis of that shows that we have for the Duracell case, we've spent this fiscal year about $5,500. Ann Scacco has spent about $5,600, and we charge it to this account for collection fees for delinquent accounts prior to this year. There's also about $4,500 to a law firm for, it's a planning and zoning issue at this point. So that's roughly the numbers for the 17,000. And there's also about $3,000 in there for negotiations. Going through the rest of the accounts, everything else is pretty much in order. I didn't see anything really out of whack. Yeah, again, in the health department, there's a health secretary. There shouldn't be there. It won't be there next time. That's about it on that.
Bob, what about the spend rate on Parks and Rec? Is that?
Yeah, so looking at the programs this year as compared to last year, for the first 2 months last year, we had about $107,000, 106,787. This year we have 73,560. The biggest items in there is there's two big items. We still have some senior park and rec counselors that are working for the town part-time. They're either greeters or they're working on the hotline, or some of them have been going around the town hall cleaning the railings and the doorknobs and any of the touch surfaces. So that represents about $32,000. And then during the course of the year, or the last 2 months, there was about $14,700 spent for the virtual theater that Eileen had in operation a few different times. So, and then there was also included in that number was they had Camp in a Box for different grade levels, the younger ones, middle school ones, and I don't know if it went to high school, but there was 3 different levels. And so there was some money set aside that's coming out of the virtual theater for those numbers. So in total, the expenses for Park and Rec this year is $73,560. So they're down $33,000. So that's a good thing. But the revenue is down $57,000. So we're a little short on that side. And if you look at Park and Rec and Senior Center together, we're probably down overall, the two of them, about $22,000. Because the Senior Center had last year about $12,000 in expenses. This year they only had $900 in minor supplies. So that's a plus of about $11,000. So yeah, I mean, that would cover those. Those are the two big categories that would have been really affected in the town for COVID. I mean, conveyance taxes, houses still seem to be selling. The taxes on those are coming in. The recording fees are coming in.
How about the financial impact for the library?
You know, I didn't look at the revenue on that. The revenue on the library is typically on the low side. There isn't much that really comes in. Their salary is $165,000. Well, that's the total expense. It's on page 10. Let me just see. Contracted services is $43,000, I think, and I can check and let you know. I think they had a lot of virtual opportunities for the public to log on, and I think that's where that expense was coming on. She had budgeted $49,900, and she's already spent $43,300. So I'll look at that, and I'll send everybody an email and let you know what that is.
Hey, Bob.
Yep.
In fact, Robert, instead of, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dee.
No, I was just going to ask, what is the reason for the shortfall in the rebate from the insurance company? Is it COVID related, or did we have some other issue this year?
No, it's not us. Everybody gets allocated a certain amount from reserves that they have. They might have had large claims last year in different areas, and because of the claims that they had, they reduced the amount of money that they were sending out to the towns.
There's no real explanation from them, just we're getting less.
That's all. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Claim race or something. And you know, it's difficult for us to do this kind of piecemeal. So what I've asked Bob to do is, now that we're into September, we have 2 months of experience. So what I've asked Bob to do is to give us kind of a more detailed look on the revenue and expense side, so that we can kind of extrapolate and project out. At some point in the near future, in fact, we've had a couple already, we should expect folks to come to us saying, we need this or we need that. And I think it's premature and frankly imprudent to
say yes to anything until we have a better view of what our entire fiscal year will look like. So again, I've asked Bob to kind of look to the revenue side. As he mentioned, it's likely we're going to have fairly significant shortfalls in the number of our non-tax receipt accounts. On the expense side, we know we've got Board of Ed additions, we've got Police Department additions. Bob will be able to tell us perhaps where there are some other exposure items, but at least with 2 full months of exposure or experience, we can extrapolate that and look to a year and start making some informed decisions. All right, anything else for Bob?
I just wanted to mention also that Tom Galliford is in charge of the FEMA reimbursements. And on the first one, which was for January through March, a very small amount was submitted because it was just the start of COVID. But the submitted costs were $3,650. And very shortly, within the next week or so, we're expecting a check for $2,738. So they're turning it around pretty quickly. The second one is already out there. It's for $34,000 right now. And he's expecting probably somewhere around $25,500 for that one. So surprisingly, it is coming in quick on that as well, because on the last one, it took like a year and a half, 2 years to resolve. So
Kind of two follow-up points to that. One was we'll include, right, in that more comprehensive view that Bob will give us, we'll include the piecemeal from Tom, whatever Laura has and whatever the other departments have as well. Again, for a comprehensive view of where we are after a couple months. And secondly, you may all recall that Bob took the under, I took the over on when FEMA would start reimbursing us, and Bob won. I was in the over 2 years, Bob was in the under 2 years. So anyone who wants to join Bob and I for breakfast, please let me know, and we'll do so in a way that conforms with Robert's rules.
all right.
Okay,
All right.
Mr. Chair, two
Yes.
things. One, I'll join you for breakfast. Thank you very much. Number two, just as a reminder, and we have to do more analysis on this, but those shortfalls of revenue in the Park and Rec department, more in the Park and Rec, less so in the Senior Center, but certainly for Park and Rec, those shortfalls in revenue also equate to a reduction in expenses, because those are programs that are not being done, and it's not being run because of COVID. So it's not a one-to-one wash, but there is a significant decrease in that too. But we'll put those in the numbers for your next report.
Okay.
Well, I did mention that we did have savings on that, even though the revenue is down 50 the revenue is down 57,000. We had 33,000 in savings on the expense side.
So Bob, you covered quite a few departments here. Is there anything else which you can see on here which might be COVID sensitive that might come knocking for additional funds?
Possibly the fire departments, but they all report to Tommy, and they report their expenses in so that we can get reimbursed from FEMA. Also, the Board of Ed will be supplying him some information because of all the shields that we bought and the PPP that they had to buy for the schools. So I think those are the big departments there. We included in that second one the shields for the town hall. If you come in, I mean, just about every department has the plastic sheeting up around, or the Live-On, I think it's called, Live-On glass all around the building. So for protection, so I don't see any other ones that would be coming at this point. Those are the main ones.
Okay.
But again, Robert, to try to get ahead of this as soon as we can, Bob's going to try to put a more comprehensive view together sometime next week, and if we need to, we'll get this group together on a special meeting so that we can, again, have a better view of where the year is likely to come out, where, again, our levers are, so areas of exposure, and then we can start making informed decisions.
Good.
All right, if nothing else for our comptroller, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I think we didn't make a motion on accepting his report yet, Bob.
Fair enough. Entertain a motion to accept the comptroller's report as submitted.
I'd make a motion to accept Bob's report. as
Second.
submitted.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 You like to make a motion? You want to make a motion, Bob? Robert?
No, me? Look at,
Oh, the other Robert.
Too many Bobs.
To adjourn?
Manfreda makes a motion. I hate talking about myself in the third person, but for this purpose. A motion to adjourn.
I
Is
second
there
it.
a second?
Yes.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Good deal.
Good
Good night,
evening.
everyone. Bye-bye.
yeah.